Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are, when you are. I want to just weigh in on episode 3 of season 2 of The Mandalorian, called, aptly, The Jedi, featuring Ahsoka Tano, live action. It wasn't Ashley Eckstein who did the voice to it, which is a little weird, hearing a different voice. But it was Rosario Dawson, who not only is awesome just in and of herself, but also I felt did just a damn good job with Ahsoka anyway. She might not have the exact same voice, but it sounded to me, and I could just be reading into it because maybe I wanted to like it or something like that, but it sounded to me as if she was not necessarily doing an imitation, but still following along with like sort of Ashley Eckstein's cadence with it. On top of which, even though there was, makeup, and I think the oh, I just totally blanked on the actual sort of extensions from Togruta's head. It looked like they were probably, had some sort of mocap thing on and then just digitally filled it in later. But was able to kind of maneuver with however they did that, however they monitored it. She did a really good job. Okay, so the whole episode as a whole was again very, sort of Western slash samurai sort of episode. So they're really, really plugging in with some of the old school like Kurosawa type stuff, which I'm all for completely. And it just began, like, I gotta say, like, there was a couple points in the beginning and then sort of climactic battling stuff at the end where basically it was almost, I mean, it was sort of like this like ninja horror movie almost. Like she was just picking dudes off, like hide in the mist and in the dark, wait till they're looking somewhere else, come around, and then bam, in there, murder, and then kind of disappear, come in, and then bam, in there, like murder. It was freaking awesome, really badass, I believe, as the kids are wont to say anymore. So that was like super cool. And they had the white lightsabers. Obviously, she should have had them by then anyway, since she had them in Rebels. So and then it wasn't too long after Order 66 that she put them together. I didn't read, but I listened to on the audiobook the Ahsoka book, um, and that kind of helped kind of bridge a little bit of a gap of some things between Clone Wars and Rebels. But so yeah, you got a town, a walled-in town. You got some crappy troops keeping it in, and there's like this really nice, beautiful sort of inner palace courtyard thing. Some trees, and it's cool. Michael Biehn was in it, looking a little rough, sounding a little rough. Apparently, Dave Filoni both wrote and directed this episode, and I don't know if they meant to do this, but there were sometimes Michael Bihn's delivery made him sound like he was in a David Lynch movie. I'm not complaining about that at all. Obviously, I'm a big fan of David Lynch, but there's a couple of things I'm just like, it's like he's like in a David Lynch movie. So it was not complaining, but it was a little sort of like, huh, interesting. But the woman who's sort of running this town has this, big long metal spear and has the sort of skin tone and almost like tattoo or things of the species race that like Barris Offee is. And for a split second, I knew the designs were very different. I knew the designs were different. But I was wondering if maybe if those were tattoos that could have been augmented or something like that. If this was going to be Barris Offee, later on, obviously she had, that's where some of the animosity was. There was this is the person who sort of betrayed and set up Ahsoka that led to her leaving the order before and everything. And then Ahsoka's asking, like demanding, like, where's your master and everything like that. So I wasn't sure. I was like, oh, how is this going to turn out? But I knew it wasn't going to be Barris Offee. Part of me kind of hoped maybe it would be. A little fanboy closure in with that, maybe a little bit. Uh, but so you see her kind of go and murder some stuff and say, I'm, one day and I'm coming for you, sort of thing. Mando comes in, finds the town, sees how kind of crappy everything is and people in like these weird electro gibbets. And then the woman basically tries to hire him to hunt down and kill Ahsoka. Turns out the spear is pure Beskar. So that would obviously, even in terms of just monetary, would be like a huge thing. But for Mandalorian, it's like double trouble. So he doesn't blatantly say he'll do it, but it kind of seems like it's a little open. Finds it now as a cool thing. She comes in with the double blades, and he's blocking it with his, was these glaives, with the Beskar and blocking stuff with that. Tries to, flamethrower, catches her cape. She flips, tosses over. He does the little grappling hook thing, wraps her around, and she looks up, smiles, jumps over this branch, slides down, making a sort of leverage pulley system, shooting the Mandalorian up with that, and then he cuts it and she cuts the other thing. Like that was kind of neat, like the smile on her face as she did it and flipped over. It's like, but they get along, and finds out, hey, no, I'm looking for Ahsoka Tano. That's you. Bo-Katan sent me. And she's like, because of that? And he's like, yeah, because of that. So she, seems to recognize the Baby Yoda, the Baby Yizzle, the child. And so you kind of see them kind of meditating together, and it looks like there's sort of telepathy going on, and Mandalorian's just kind of pacing back and forth, and she's like, yeah, I know who this is. His name's Grogu, I guess his name. And it was so cute because every time anyone said Grogu or anything, the child goes like, huh? Yeah. And he was making little pug noises. Like he kind of had a few times where it almost sounded like when a pug sleeps and they got like this little, just sort of regular breathing, almost sounds like it could turn into snoring sort of thing. So he was making those sounds, which, again, knowing anything else about me besides David Lynch's Star Wars, pugs, very high up on my list of things that are amazing. But then a couple little squeaky things actually sounded like my cat too. So she's like, no, this kid was, he was in the Jedi Temple, and then when everything fell, someone hit him, and in the years that have gone past, he has been really afraid of using his powers. So it almost sounds like he sort of shut them down. I don't know, you can't really tell if there's any real amnesia stuff, but it seems to be, like, after the time in the temple, when the temple falls, there's darkness. So, we don't know if, because of, being tortured or experimented on, he's hidden some stuff. It's looking like he hid some of his powers and some of his things just so he wouldn't get found out anyway. So we got a little bit more backstory on the child. Besides a name, we have he was known about, he was at the temple, when the order fell, he was kind of gotten out and hidden. And in the years in between, he's kind of, survived in like a sort of traumatized state. They do some stuff to test him, floating rocks, and then the little thing from his ship console, and the Grogu, the child, does it, and he's like, all right, yeah, good job. And her thing is, I can't train him. He's too attached to you, and he's too afraid. I sense a lot of fear in you. These things, fear and attachment, I've seen what happens to those of us, and she keeps saying the best of us, and I'm like, honey child, baby, that's you. It wasn't Anakin. That's you, Ahsoka. Child, that is you, not Anakin. Anakin was kind of an asshole. Like, there's a few times in Clone Wars where it's like, that's what a narcissist would do. And I'm not talking about, when I say narcissist, I'm not talking about someone who's just full of themselves. I'm talking about an actual, full-on, diagnosable personality disorder narcissist. Like some shitty stuff. And so it's just sort of like, this was my one sort of issue with the whole thing. That I had felt, and especially this is going to be taking place after Rebels. So she already knew Kanan and Ezra and stuff they went through. So I was hoping And this is, Dave Filoni has actually written this after Rebels and everything too. So I was really hoping, especially from Ahsoka, that this whole sort of ultra religious, super closed minded idea of what a sentient being is capable of and being able to, you know, reasonably understand that, people are going to, and I would say, well, this might be just a human thing. Well, but you know what? A lot of races in Star Wars seem to act pretty frickin' human. So we're going by a certain human sort of baseline in terms of perspective and emotion and all this other stuff anyway. The expectations for Jedis, the behavior of a lot of other creatures and stuff like that in the 43 years or so of Star Wars lore and everything else like that. A lot of other beings, not technically human, act really freaking human. So the idea that, okay, well, so this thing who's still very young by its own species standards, appears so at least. His age and size and everything might be some of that might be due to the trauma and him kind of artificially keeping himself that way. Maybe, I don't know. That's not explained at all. Who knows? But if we're gonna, we already did that with Rebels, where hey, yeah, you're afraid, I'm afraid too, but that doesn't mean that we can't work to not be as afraid and be, it's the struggle between being able to go, all right, I'm afraid of this. Am I going to take the quote unquote easy path and just sort of give into it? Or am I going to step up and do something a little bit more difficult, which is the right thing to do? Now, if you aren't capable, you aren't ready, willing, able, or capable, or even taught to recognize that line, and it's like everything's bad. This tiny little narrow thing of everything is good, and everything else in the entire galaxy is bad. Guess what? You're gonna fall to the freaking dark side because you're not taught that. All right, if this tiny little thing is narrow, is where you want to stay. You're just taught and shamed and traumatized into staying in this tiny little narrow hole, which you can't do because you're always still going to have thoughts and feelings going on that are sort of like, oh, that are going to stray outside of that tiny little narrow bubble. So now what happens if you're taught that everything outside of this narrow bubble is bad? When you naturally have thoughts that are going to do that, you're going to start beating yourself up that, no, I'm bad. I had these bad thoughts, I have to get rid of them. And the more you start thinking, no, don't think this, no, don't think this, no, don't think this, you're going to keep thinking it. So you're actually creating the cycle that you're trying to, oh, nope, we don't want to do that. So and that was one of the cool things about Star Wars Rebels, is you had Kanan talking to Ezra in a way that was like, hey, you know what? Yeah, everyone's going to get afraid. Everyone's going to get angry. Those are natural things for people to fear. To people to feel. Sorry, I apologize. For people to feel. Even if you were raised in the Jedi Temple from that birth to seven sort of range that the Jesuits covet so much, you're still going to have these feelings. And there are some people. Yeah, one thing here, I'll try and find it here as I'm talking. That and those are natural. That's going to happen. It should happen, and you can't really beat yourself up over it because it's not right to do that because you're going to have. So I was hoping that Ahsoka post Rebels, Dave Filoni post Rebels, would not be so trapped in that old mindset of, okay, he's fear and he's got attachments, which again are still a not correct way to look at attachments. It's not. Take it from someone who's been studying sort of like Eastern philosophy for over 20 years now, from the Taoism and the Buddhism through the training with the Taiji and the Xingyi, the Bagua, the Qigong, the sitting meditation, the laying down, the standing up meditation, the actual sort of like Chan Zen training I've had for a while and everything. Everything I've been reading and writing and watching and listening to and everything for years, it's not the correct attachment that they're talking about. I would have thought that would have been gone, or at the very least would have been able to deal with. But I'm trying to be understanding that, okay, there's a lot of stuff maybe she wasn't able to work out and through. Her last sort of indication with everything was, the Jedi sort of way of things is messed up. Anakin had all these sort of feelings and stuff going on, so maybe she doesn't feel confident in her ability to train someone around or out of those things. But I found this a while ago. It's attributed to someone named Wu Xin. I don't know anything about him. I really like this thing, and Wu, I want to give credit where credit's due. So the inherent nature of mind is to process thought. To attempt the cessation of thought goes against what is natural. The goal, therefore, is not the cessation of thought. The goal is the cessation of identification with thought. That identification with the thought, that identification with, like, I was like, oh, I'm feeling anger, I'm really pissed off about this, and then creating that as being who you are, that's the attachment. Being able to be like, all right, I'm feeling scared, recognizing that, and not creating it where now I am scared, I am angry, or anything. You can recognize those feelings without identifying with it. And then if you're taught to do that, especially at a young age, and especially if you already have trauma, you can see the juxtaposition of that. And it might not be at first, but if you're at a certain developmental stage in your youth, these things can now be processed and healed in a much more sort of, where am I with the wire? In a much healthier and cleaner fashion. So that was the sort of annoying thing, the one annoying thing that I kind of had about the whole episode. But I mean, live action Ahsoka basically kicking ass the way that she might in a cartoon or anything, or a comic or the book, was freaking great to see. Again, the voice was a little weird, but Rosario Dawson did an amazing job with it. She was really believable as someone who had power and confidence and control, and someone who has some development of themselves and other things too. This kind of goes back to some of the problems that I have with things like, if you watch Highlander or any of these shows or movies with, like, 700,000-800,000-year-old people, vampires or whatever. I don't believe most of these people have power, because they act just like some dumbass it could be 30, 40 years old, they still act like a dumbass 15-year-old. I don't believe you have power, and they still wander around. Gary Oldman in the Dracula movie, he was Dracula. You can believe he kind of had power because he had that poise and he kind of had that energy. You believe he had power. You believe that he could have been around for a long time because he doesn't kind of act exactly the way a normal person would. So Rosario Dawson did a great job with having poise, but with still being relaxed, with having, power, and having, have had, obvious sort of spiritual experiences and stuff too. There was a brief shot as, the Mandalorian Din Djarin was looking for Ahsoka initially in, like, this really screwed up forest. You see the daughter as the owl that has been with Ahsoka since they were on the planet with the father, the brother, and the sister. So the owl was still there too. It was just sort of like, it was off in the corner, it was really dark, but even my colorblind butt could see it, so it was kind of there, and it was neat. So you had, eventually, she goes in, starts hacking stuff apart, killing all these dudes. Mandalorian comes in, helps free the people, and the electro gibbets, and all this other stuff. And then, the final sort of fight is, Mandalorian and Michael being in sort of like a gunfighter western sort of thing. But Ahsoka and then the magistrate, the female magistrate, have a fight. Now, I'm watching, and the magistrate, she kicks some pretty good ass with that spear. Disarmed one of Ahsoka's lightsabers, but, Ahsoka wins at the end. And has the other one up to her neck and be like, all right, now tell me what I want to know. Because the whole thing was like, I'm not going to tell you what I know. I'm not going to tell you what you're looking for. All these people in the city are going to die. So Ahsoka wins the fight and asks, tell me where your master is. Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn? So now Ahsoka's looking for Thrawn. Which, I mean, obviously, if you've seen Rebels, him and Ezra, Ezra sort of trapped them and flew off into who knows where with the space whales. And at the end of Rebels, it looked like, Sabine and Hera and maybe even Ahsoka in her sort of Gandalf the White outfit and everything, and a sort of pole arm, metal pole arm by the looks of it, were going off to look for Ezra. So they have that as a side note. I was like, hey, this magistrate's pretty cool. I'm going to look her up. So I looked her up on IMDb. Danya Inosanto. If you're into martial arts, people, and even movies at all, you're going to recognize that name. So she's a badass sort of martial artist and stunt person in her own right. But you recognize the name because Dan Inosanto is like, the godfather of like martial arts for the past 50 years. Dan Inosanto, his most famous teacher was Bruce Lee. Now, Dan Inosanto knew other stuff and is trained in other stuff besides what he learned with Bruce Lee and everything. Guy's just a mega awesome person in and of himself, regardless of any sort of affiliation with anyone or anything else. But that's where he kind of got, famous from and everything. He's even in a couple of Bruce Lee's movies. He's also the guy, if you've seen the movie Red Belt, which is the only David Mamet thing I've ever read or seen that I could even remotely stomach, is with Chiwetel Ejiofor and Alice Braga and Emily Blunt? I'm blanking on the other one. But he's like the sort of grandmaster teacher who has like a picture up once in a while and kind of is there at the end and does some really cool stuff. But this Danya Inosanto, I mean, her godfather was Bruce Lee. So it's like, yeah, that's pretty awesome that now, she's kind of got this place in Star Wars too. So she's got, an amazing pedigree, a badass in and of herself, and then has, now come into something else. You never saw her die, so there's a good chance she's going to come up later. Who knows? So I just thought that was kind of cool. And then, Mandalorian shoots Michael Bihn's character as, Michael Biehn tries to double cross him. Michael Biehn not looking, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe all the Terminators and Alien stuff got to him after a while or something. I don't know. But it was good to see him working because, I'm used to seeing him in a ton of stuff. But now, hey, cool. Yeah, we got Terminator, Aliens, we got Tombstone, got The Rock. And I know a bunch of other stuff, but those are kind of the big ones that jump to my head right now. It's good to see him working. So the whole thing was him helping her, so Mandalorian helping Ahsoka rescue the village was going to be the thing that he would do for her to train Grogu or the child. Initially, again, I'm not going to do it because there's too much fear and he's too attached to you. But then Mando's like, I'll help you with the town if you train him. And I don't know why they had to necessarily say goodbye, because that's what he was kind of doing. There's some really touching moments with the child sleeping in the little hammock, and he's sitting there kind of rocking him and kind of getting him ready. It was like really sort of like a sad sort of thing for him. And I don't know why that means that you have to leave him. You could still train and still be around him. I mean, he's not going to the temple anymore. I don't know why that had to mean, okay, goodbye forever. I don't know why. I don't get it. Unless it had something to do with the attachment, but you'd think, okay, maybe a while with this and ease a transition might be easier too. But, maybe that's too easy of a thought. I don't know. Maybe there's a deleted scene that will make some of that make sense to me. But then again, she again says, no, seriously, I can't train him. Can't do it. Not going to do it. And he's like, you promised me. I helped you with your thing. You promised you would do this. She's like, all right, go to this other planet. So again, another planet he's got to go to. Go to this other planet. There's a temple there. Go up on a mountain. Put the kid on there and let him sort of pick his fate. What's going to happen with that? So again, he's got to go on another goose chase to another planet, to this temple, climb a frickin' mountain, and then wait to see if maybe something happens. So, but the Ahsoka's thing was like, we'll let him tap into whatever part of his fate or destiny he's going to tap into, and that, then if someone, there's not a lot of Jedi left, but if someone, he reaches out with the Force, someone hears it and finds it, that might come and help be able to be the one to train him. So my thought is that if Ahsoka's searching for Thrawn, then they probably haven't found Ezra yet either. Or maybe they did, and like Hera and Sabine and the rest of the people from Rebels are hanging out with Ezra, but he lost track of Thrawn somehow. I don't know how, but maybe somehow they did. But my guess is going to this temple, sending out, the Grogu or the Baby Yoda, sending out whatever sort of little force, psychic little blast he's going to send out, might be the thing that Ezra hears and brings him back in somehow to, this sort of galaxy at large, to bring him back, fold him back kind of into the story. That might be the impetus for that. Who knows? Now, whether or not it's because, he's already hanging out with the Rebels crew on the Ghost, and then the whole Ghost crew goes there, or he comes back, Ahsoka lets the Ghost crew know to, hey, keep an eye out because there's something that might happen, and then they find it and are able to track stuff or figure out things that go on, and they all kind of converge and come together, and it's like, oh, look, it's Rebels, and we're going to keep going with that. Because allegedly, Giancarlo Esposito said that season 3 is when a lot more answers start coming, allegedly. So maybe that's going to set up stuff that, can lead into season 3. So my guess is like, the final showdown with Grand Moff Gideon's going to be at the end of season 2 with whatever those shock trooper, droid trooper, evil death squad thing that he has, and whatever cloney stuff he's doing. That might kind of wrap up this season, and then next season is where maybe you get more backstory and a lot of things, and things kind of moving forward in now a larger Star Wars context, instead of having a very sort of closed world, sort of outer rim western tombstone sort of look. He's getting sucked in a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, a little bit more to grander schemes in the galaxy. Now he's got a little touchstone in with reclaiming Mandalore, and now he's got a touchstone with Ahsoka, which brings in Rebels and Clone Wars stuff going on. And if going to this temple and having Grogu do stuff to Grogu, I think, actually not Grogu. I keep wanting to say Gorgo, and that's just like a monster movie from back in the day, and that's not. I think it's British even. That's so it's Grogu, I think. So that might be the thing that really brings that in, and then really catapults Mando into now really the sort of galaxy stuff at large, and the rebuilding of the New Republic, and maybe some of the other stuff that's going on. Luke's name might get kicked out here or there with some other things. I'm doubting that Luke's going to be the one to pick up to train him. I'm doubting that. My money, if I had to bet, is still going to be on Ezra. Either he's already back and they find him, or that's what brings him back, and then they might have to deal with Thrawn. Live action Thrawn, that just kicked me in my mind. Live action Thrawn would be fantastic. Holy crap, that would be so cool. Now, I love Thrawn from the Timothy Zahn books because I read 20 some odd of the extended universe books, from the Timothy Zahn sort of trilogy, and then the Kevin J. Anderson, and then, after that, and then going into I read the whole Yuuzhan Vong War, and then the follow-up stuff after that with Jason Solo going evil and everything. Like 20 some odd plus books or so I read, and I'm really mad that the extended universe just got thrown right the hell out because there was super hell of a lot of damn cool stuff. Thrawn was one of those things from the extended universe that they wisely brought in to now the canonical universe as opposed to Legends, which still annoys me. There is someone I kind of want to blame for that, but I don't know if it's completely right to do so. But it's still really annoying because, damn, those were some good stories. Anyway. So yeah, we might get a live action Thrawn, and that might be waiting until like season 3 or some other stuff like that. That might not, we kind of got to clear up Gideon first, but this might be setting up some other stuff for later as well. So overall, Dave Filoni, we love you. You're a wonderful person, and thank you for being amazing. Rosario Dawson, we love you. You're a wonderful person. Thank you for being amazing. Hopefully this can, although, you know what? She was good as Claire in the sort of Marvel Netflix universe, which, I'm sorry, that's going off on a whole other thing. They need to at least absorb Daredevil. They should absorb Luke Cage into it as well, but at least Daredevil into the proper MCU, because, god damn, that was a good show. Punisher was a good show. I liked Luke Cage. Jessica Jones, I could kind of take or leave. I hated Iron Fist. Defenders was but damn, like Daredevil and Punisher were really freaking good, and I really like Luke Cage too. So those, my personal opinion, so it was really good in that. But if that's not going to continue, I hope we can get more of her as Ahsoka, even if it's almost sort of like as she was as like Fulcrum in Rebels, where she kind of shows up once in a while, but she has a presence, and then every so often you bring out the badass and just have her tearing shit up. Because there was some stuff that was straight up like just like horror movie murder. Like there's one thing, she's messing with these two guys, kind of going back and forth, then she comes up behind him, and you just see like the two guys here, and she kind of comes up behind him, like these big eyes. She's got her lightsaber, she ignites them and like pulls them apart, and it's just like, you're going to be murdered so hard right now. And yeah, she did. There was a couple people that she kind of gave the look to spare, but there was when it was just outright blatant, right here in your face sort of Anakin stuff, it was badass. But then there was a lot of sort of ninja vanish, cover of darkness, mess with your mind, pop up, you're dead. So just remember, Obi-Wan did refer to her once or twice as our apprentice. I thought that was telling. So the Jedi episode of Mandalorian season 2 was frickin' amazing. Really, really loved it. And the only real problem I had again was just sort of the philosophical sort of thing that kind of I was hoping we were past. But I can still rationalize, and I feel like I am rationalizing it, but I can still rationalize the intent that they wanted to do with Ahsoka. And maybe they can come back later and kind of retcon a little bit and have her just sort of admit, like, listen, I didn't have the language to say it, but I just knew I wasn't right for this. Because it's, everyone's got to kind of have what's right for their teacher and everything. I still say, but again, I still say that it was like, all right, the way we had already done with this whole fear and attachment crap, I thought we had gotten past that and had a more healthy engagement with what that actually means. Maybe someone was reading or listening to some Alan Watts, maybe, as opposed to just the sort of, not super amazing translation of things we usually have with Taoism or Buddhism in America. But no, apparently we're going to go back to, fear and attachment, can't do it. So I'm hoping it's just sort of, it's more her own sort of personal trauma than a decided backslide in the sort of ignorance of the philosophy. So that was and that's for me, my problem with it. Something I pick up on. Maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit. I can understand that. But yeah, super good. I haven't talked about any. I haven't laid anything out about the rest of the this sort of season yet, which has been really good overall. Yeah, there's a couple filler episodes so far, but the filler episodes were at least fun. And everyone stopped losing their crap over Baby Yoda eating the eggs. Apparently, and I didn't know this. I've seen more posts about people talking about people losing their crap over it than I've actually seen anyone losing their crap over it. But they weren't fertilized. You didn't have any problem with him eating a live damn frog. You didn't have any problem eating everything else that he's freaking eating. And, you know, okay. Anyway, that's beside the point. But yeah, the episode of the Jedi, man, as badass as the Heiress episode was, with seeing not only a live action Bo-Katan, which was fabulous, and a badass live action, but the actual woman who did her voice, Katie Kara Starbuck Thrace Sackhoff, was actually live action Bo-Katan. She did the voice in Clone Wars and Rebels. She did the live action. Fan-fucking-tastic. And yes, I am fanboying over it a little bit because the 2000s Battlestar Galactica show is one of the greatest shows ever. The first one from the 70s and 80s, crap. Tried watching it many times in my life, including when it was on, and I hated it. The remake, I was a little late to because I'm like, I hated the other show. Ended up watching it. Amazing show. It's like 4 seasons of just fan-freaking-tastic TV. Katie Sackhoff, huge part of that. And now, not only has done the voice for Clone Wars and Rebels, but is now live action Bo-Katan in the show too. Clearly going to have something that's going to happen later on, at least this season, if not possibly, hopefully, going forward through the rest of the sort of run of The Mandalorian. This is actually... Live action Ahsoka is actually, to me, a bigger deal than live action Bo-Katan. Part of the reason I think live action Bo-Katan is such a big thing because it was Katie Sackhoff playing her in the cartoon and now in the live action. That's a big deal. Where this could go in terms of the show and the character for the Mandalorian and everything, this is a huge thing that can go too in terms of just Mandalore as a whole. Possibly, they tease Boba Fett, and that hasn't happened or anything, so maybe sometime soon something like that's going to happen. But Ahsoka, and a couple friends of mine can agree with this, Ahsoka is probably our favorite Star Wars character, or at the very least in the very, very sort of high ranking of, a top 3 or something like that. I've been watching Star Wars and the original trilogy and have been involved with it for almost literally my entire life. I was wee babby when Empire came out. I didn't see the first Star Wars. I was a little too young for that. Wee babby when Empire came out. Saw Jedi in the theater. I remember seeing Return of the Jedi in the theater. And I remember, I had my grandma and grandpa were the only people for years and years and years that I knew that had cable at all, let alone having HBO once in a while. And that was like a blowing your mind thing that anyone had cable, let alone HBO. But she taped the original trilogy on a VHS, and I'd watch them all the way through, rewind it, and watch them all the way through and rewind it, and watch them all the way through and rewind it, and watch them all the way through and rewind it again and again and again. Granted, Star Trek and Doctor Who I was probably exposed to first, but Star Wars is Star Wars sort of thing. And to have a character who comes in, not even in the movies, in one of the shows, maybe sort of a tentative, sort of like, oh, where is this going to go at first? Kind of like, oh, great, a young kid who's, Anakin called her Snips for being snippy. Oh, she's sassy, great. Kind of turned from this, oh, where is this going to go kind of thing, to being quite possibly my favorite, if not very high up in my rankings of favorite Star Wars characters ever. And now an actress whom I think is a really good actress, who did a really good job with her, is playing her in a live action thing and is continuing that story and that character in a really good show as well. So if she just showed up and it was that Star Wars Resistance, it might be just sort of like, huh, great. If she just sort of showed up in, I shudder to think what would happen if she just showed up in Rise of Skywalker. God. I mean, besides just the voice, you know, telling Rey that, everything's cool, she's not alone, sort of. Besides that, literally showed up. I would hate to see what would happen to her with that. That wouldn't have been good. But Mandalorian is an amazing show, super good, and she was really good in it, and it was really nice to see it in there. So, I mean, I got people yelling at me because I posted pictures of her in there. It was like, oh, how'd you know? It was like, wait a minute, you've been watching the show. Bo-Katan blatantly said, go to this place, find Ahsoka Tano. There was an episode after that that didn't have Ahsoka in this. I don't know. How did you not know Ahsoka was going to be in this? How did you not know Rosario Dawson was going to be in this? I didn't give away anything of the plot of the show. It's just there's pictures of her. I don't understand. But anyway, so yeah, it was just really good. I've watched it a couple times already in, a day. I watched it twice in a day? Yeah, technically I did. Why am I talking to you? There's no one there. Anyway, so yeah, I've already seen it twice because it was like I just had to watch it. I guys like pick up on stuff, and it was just really good, and it was fun. It was well acted, well written, well directed, interesting, and not only bringing someone in and kind of having almost a closed little thing in of itself, but also this can be a jumping off point and set up stuff for who knows what. So if they want to kind of keep with this sort of lone, Ronin gunslinger kind of thing, they can kind of keep that, but they're bringing in little things like Bo-Katan and Ahsoka Tano, excuse me, to really start bringing in that bigger world of that sort of Star Wars galaxy into now the Mandalorian. However they want to do it live action, and then maybe that might set up other things going forth in the future as well, if they do have any spin-offs or any potential movies or shows that are taking place maybe after that sort of sequel Resistance era, and some of the stuff that they're doing now could be the setup for that. Those things are going to harken back to this, bringing in a whole new thing. They might even have no, they already did the Resistance. And they got some of the Empire in with Mandalorian, and they did a whole thing with the Resistance. So having another thing with Thrawn doing like they did in the books of sort of an Empire as well might be just really beating a dead horse. Or maybe it's just, hey, even with the Resistance defeating the First Order, there still could be Imperial remnants, and that, which is I think what it was called in the books too, the Imperial remnant. So there was a section of the galaxy which was still under Imperial or Empire control. So maybe they bring in Thrawn, and that's a thing now too, and maybe that's going to be different from the First Order. So they have one faction of the Empire goes through the First Order, the other faction of the Empire goes through Thrawn, maybe if they bring that in. And that might be something that they go to in the sort of sequel era as well, if they bring in something else with now Rey trying to do something with, a sequel to the sequels or anything. I don't know. I think that those ones might be done, but still, who knows? So yeah, there's a lot of spoilers in this, so if you haven't already watched it, I've ruined everything for you, and oh well. But I'm going to put the spoilers in with the stuff, so you should know that's what you're getting into with this anyway. I know I said some bad words too, but I'm grown up. And I'm not putting the little thing that says this was made for kids, so sorry. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. I just wanted to rant about it. I've been sort of talking about it, ranting about it. Obviously over text chains and everything, because we don't see anybody anymore. But I was really excited about it. I was really excited for it to happen when Bo-Katan showed up as Katie Sackhoff. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And because I'd seen the rumors that, oh, Rosario Dawson's going to be Ahsoka, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll believe it when I see it, sort of thing. Like when I thought it was awesome that rumor, I guess rumor that Tatiana Maslany was going to be She-Hulk. Just bringing in Tatiana Maslany in any sort of like quality MCU thing would be awesome anyway, because she's freaking fabulous actor. I don't know how she didn't win literally all the awards ever for Orphan Black. Jeezy, crazy. Like she was 10 types of phenomenal in that because she had to be like 100 different people. And she made all these clones of her like be different and be awesome. And that's a great show anyway too. Like I could really just watch Orphan Black just for her interacting with herself and with Felix and a couple other people. You don't even need the other stuff with it. Like just that was. But so I was kind of like, oh, okay, Rosario Dawson, and then they said Ahsoka Tano, and they had Bo-Katan in there, and it's like, okay, so this is really going to happen, and then I actually see her, and the first parts that you see her is like ninja vanish, smoke shadow ninja murder, and it's like, yes, that was awesome. It was freaking badass. And I think she did a really good job with the character. Again, still shout out to Ashley Eckstein for voicing her and bringing her to life for all those years in 2 different shows and at least 1 book. Great job with that. But I think, Rosario Dawson did a really good job kind of carrying that torch through as well. And yeah, it was really, I'm basically just ranting about this to rant about it because I was really excited to watch it. And it lived up to kind of my expectations and was really fun and enjoyable, and I'm looking forward to just kind of watching it again because it was awesome. It had everything that you needed. It had Force and Jedi stuff. It had badass fighting things. It had, story, carrying on a little bit of story from before and setting up things for the future, and was really well done. And already know in Mandalorian, if someone gets a one-off, there's a good chance they're coming back later. I mean, they even brought back the duty frozen carbonite in the very first episode, in the episode previous to the Jedi, when you brought back Carl Weathers. And I know his name is Grief something, but I'm still calling him Carl Weathers because Carl Weathers transcends. I mean, he was Apollo Creed. He's Action Jackson. He's Dude in Predator. He's in Arrested Development. He's Carl frickin' Weathers. And I know that there's all the controversy, whichever way you want to say it, regarding Gina Carano and how, people kind of want Cara Dune to kind of leave off now because of whatever the hell's going on with Gina Carano. I don't even know that much. I had to ask somebody, and they're like, oh, your tweets this. I'm like, oh, Jesus. But I also see a ton of people who are just like, no, I hope they don't. I love her character. And even people who would be sort of like, hey, these things that she said might be bothersome or something like that. But even there's like, all right, yeah, she said what she said. I really like her character. Keep her in. So who knows what's going to happen to that? But they had one-offs and then came back and are kind of fan favorites. And well, actually, Grief was in a couple episodes, but like early on, and then they came back and did all this other stuff and brought a lot of things together towards the end. And tied some things in and kept things going with that. So this is very likely something that's going to happen with Ahsoka. So she's going to, I'm guessing she's going to show up at least 1 more episode in this season alone, and then hopefully has further showing up. That's not language. She shows up further on in the series as well, and maybe even in other stuff too. All right, so I've been ranting and just repeating myself ad nauseum and going off into tangents I'm trying to control now. So I'm going to leave off here. Good hunting, everyone. Thank you, and see you.